Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was shot to death by an assassin late today as he stood on a balcony in Memphis, Tennessee.
It's 6:01 p.m. on April 4th, 1968, at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is standing on the second-floor balcony of room 306, leaning over the railing to speak with Jesse Jackson in the parking lot below. The 39-year-old civil rights leader is preparing for dinner before delivering another speech to support striking sanitation workers. He has no idea that a sniper's bullet is about to end his life and shatter the dreams of millions of Americans. A single shot rings out across the motel courtyard, striking King in the right cheek and jaw, severing arteries in his neck. Within an hour, one of the most important voices for justice and equality in American history will be silenced forever. Here is how it unfolded. By the time this video is published, over 55 years have passed since that tragic evening in Memphis. But the official story of King's assassination, that a racist drifter named James Earl Ray acted alone, has been challenged by King's own family, multiple investigations, and a 1999 civil trial that found the government guilty of conspiracy. The evidence suggests a far more complex and disturbing truth about who really killed Martin Luther King Jr. It's been a dangerous few months for King as he expands his civil rights work beyond racial equality to economic justice and opposition to the Vietnam War. Death threats follow him everywhere. In 1958, he was nearly killed when a deranged woman stabbed him in the chest at a book signing. After President Kennedy's assassination in 1963, King told his wife Coretta, "This is what's going to happen to me also. This is a sick society." King has come to Memphis to support 1,300 predominantly black sanitation workers who have been on strike since February. The workers, who earn poverty wages and lack basic safety equipment, are demanding recognition of their union and better working conditions. The breaking point came when two workers, Ecole Cole and Robert Walker, were crushed to death by a malfunctioning garbage truck, and their families received no compensation. The Lorraine Motel on Mulberry Street has become King's regular lodging when visiting Memphis. The modest, black-owned establishment sits in the heart of the city's African-American community. King and his close friend Ralph Abernathy stay so frequently in room 306 that staff nickname it the King Abernathy Suite. The room features large windows and a balcony that overlooks the motel's courtyard and parking area. What King doesn't know is that his choice of accommodations has made him an easy target. The motel's open design, with rooms accessible from an external walkway, provides minimal security. Across Mulberry Street, less than 200 feet away, stands a row of run-down boarding houses and businesses, including a flop house owned by Bessie Brewer and Jim's Grill restaurant on the ground floor. The area buzzes with activity as King's entourage prepares for the evening. Members of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference move between rooms, coordinating logistics for that night's rally at Mason Temple. In the parking lot below, King's driver Solomon Jones polishes the car while other associates gather to discuss strategy. Memphis police maintain a visible presence around the motel, but their protection is minimal and potentially compromised. Black Detective Ed Reddit, assigned to monitor King's security, has been mysteriously pulled from duty just hours before the assassination. Police officials claim they received a threat against Reddit's life, forcing them to send him home for his own safety. The threat later proves to be fabricated. Take a look at what happened in the days leading up to the shooting. On April 3rd, King delivered his prophetic "I've been to the mountaintop" speech at Mason Temple, telling the crowd, "I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." His words proved eerily prescient. Within 24 hours, he would be dead. James Earl Ray, a 40-year-old escaped convict, has been moving through the shadows of this story for months. Born into poverty in rural Illinois, Ray has a long criminal record but no history of racial violence or political activism. After escaping from Missouri State Penitentiary in 1967, he mysteriously acquired money, multiple fake identities, and sophisticated travel documents that allowed him to crisscross the country and even travel to Canada. According to the official FBI narrative, Ray drove to Memphis, rented a room in Bessie Brewer's boarding house under the alias John Willard, and shot King from the bathroom window with a Remington 760 rifle. After the shooting, he allegedly dropped a bundle containing the rifle and his personal belongings outside Canepa Amusement Company before fleeing in a white Ford Mustang. But this story immediately encounters serious problems. The bathroom window Ray supposedly shot from was partially blocked by tree branches, making a clear shot to the motel balcony nearly impossible. Captain Tommy Smith, the first Memphis police detective on the scene, later stated, "The shot couldn't have been from the flophouse. There was a limb about this thick growing diagonally through the window, and you couldn't even see the Lorraine Motel from that bathroom." Even more suspicious, Memphis police worked through the night after the assassination, cutting down the tree branches that would have obstructed the supposed sniper's nest. Crime scene photographs taken the next morning show the trees had been mysteriously cleared, destroying crucial evidence that could have proven the shot was impossible from that location. The ballistics evidence proves even more damaging to the official story. Modern forensic analysis has definitively excluded Ray's rifle as the murder weapon. The bullet recovered from King's body shows a rifling pattern of one turn in every 11.25 inches, while Ray's Remington 760 has a rifling pattern of one turn in every 10 inches. The FBI's own experts could only conclude that both bullets came from the same model of rifle, but with millions of Remington 760s in circulation, this proves nothing. Ray's fingerprints were found on the rifle and various items in the bundle dropped outside Canepa Amusement Company, but significantly, no fingerprints were found in the boarding house room he allegedly rented, or in the bathroom where the shot was supposedly fired. For a man described by prosecutors as careless and leaving evidence everywhere, this selective absence of fingerprints is highly suspicious. The state's key witness, Charles Quitman Stevens, claims he saw Ray fleeing the boarding house immediately after the shooting. But Stevens had been arrested 155 times for public intoxication and was drunk at the time of the assassination. When a CBS journalist showed Stevens a photograph of Ray months later, Stevens said, "From the glimpse that I got of his profile, it doesn't look like him. He's too heavy, his face is too full, he has too much hair, and his nose is too wide." Multiple witnesses reported hearing the gunshot from outside the boarding house, not from inside. Stevens' own wife told police she heard the shot from outside and saw a short man with salt and pepper hair in an army jacket and plaid shorts, running through the bushes between the boarding house and the motel. This description matches none of the physical characteristics attributed to James Earl Ray. Earl Caldwell, a New York Times reporter staying at the Lorraine Motel, was an eyewitness to the shooting. He reported seeing a man just very clearly rise out of these bushes directly across from the motel. Caldwell, an experienced journalist with no reason to fabricate his account, said he saw a white man in a crouched position emerge from vegetation near the boarding house, though he didn't see a weapon. Solomon Jones, King's driver, told police he saw someone in the bushes with a white sheet on his face immediately after the shooting. The figure ducked down, then rose without the sheet, and walked to a wall behind the boarding house before jumping down and disappearing. Multiple witnesses reported seeing this same figure flee through the bushes and scale the wall behind Jim's grill. The timeline of events makes Ray's alleged escape route physically impossible. Police arrived at the scene within 2 minutes of the shooting, yet none reported seeing a white Mustang fleeing the area. For Ray to have fired from the bathroom, returned to his room to gather his belongings, descended to the street, walked to Canepa Amusement Company to drop the evidence bundle, and then driven away unnoticed, all within 2 minutes, would have required superhuman speed. Guy Canepa, owner of the amusement company where the evidence bundle was found, provided testimony that destroys the official timeline. He stated that someone calmly walked up to his store, dropped the bundle, and walked away, several minutes before the assassination occurred. This means the evidence implicating Ray was planted before King was even shot. Take a look at what happened behind the scenes. The conspiracy to kill King extends far beyond one escaped convict with a rifle. Lloyd Jowers, owner of Jim's Grill located directly below the boarding house, became a central figure when he confessed in 1993 to participating in the assassination plot. Jowers claimed he was paid $100,000 by Memphis businessman Frank Liberto to help coordinate King's murder. According to Jowers' testimony, he was given a rifle immediately after the shooting by the actual assassin, Memphis Police Lieutenant Earl Clark. Jowers said Clark ran down from the bushes behind the boarding house, handed him the smoking rifle, and instructed him to dispose of it. Jowers then wrapped the weapon in a white sheet and hid it under the counter of his restaurant before later passing it to associates who dumped it in the Mississippi River. Frank Liberto, a Memphis produce dealer with known organised crime connections, had publicly expressed hatred for King and blamed him for disrupting business by supporting worker rights. On the day of the assassination, witness John McFerrin overheard Liberto answer a phone call and say, "I told you not to call me here. Shoot the son of a bitch on the balcony." Years later, Liberto drunkenly boasted to a woman at a restaurant that he was the one who had MLK killed. The web of conspiracy involves multiple layers of Memphis law enforcement and federal agencies. According to a janitor at Memphis Police Headquarters, the night before the assassination, there was a secret meeting in the police chief's office involving the chief, the mayor, Earl Clark, and Lieutenant Eli Strausser. The janitor reported that Strausser spent the entire next day at the firing range, practicing with a .30-06 rifle. Footprints found in the bushes behind the boarding house matched a size 13 shoe, exactly Strausser's size. Both Clark and Strausser were positioned to act as shooters, with one serving as primary and the other as backup. This explains witness reports of seeing multiple figures in the vegetation after the shooting and the organised escape through different routes. The FBI's role in King's death extends far beyond mere investigative incompetence. Under Director J. Edgar Hoover, the Bureau had conducted a systematic campaign to destroy King's reputation and effectiveness as a civil rights leader. Through the COINTELPRO program, agents bugged King's hotel rooms, attempted to blackmail him with recordings of alleged extramarital affairs, and even sent him an anonymous letter suggesting he commit suicide. 1 month after President Kennedy's assassination, according to congressional testimony, Hoover held meetings with other high-ranking FBI officials to discuss how to take care of Martin Luther King. The Bureau viewed King as a dangerous communist sympathizer whose calls for economic justice and opposition to the Vietnam War threatened the established order. Hoover's right-hand man, Associate Director Clyde Tolson, allegedly coordinated the practical aspects of the assassination conspiracy. Former Pentagon Papers whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg swore in an affidavit that FBI agent Brady Tyson told him in confidence that it was Hoover who ordered King's murder, with Tolson handling the operational details through organised crime intermediaries. The FBI's infiltration of King's inner circle provided crucial intelligence for the assassination plot. Merrill McCullough, who appeared to be a devoted member of King's entourage, was actually an undercover operative for Memphis police working with federal intelligence agencies. McCullough had been bugging King's hotel rooms and reporting on his movements and security arrangements. Photographs from the scene show McCullough kneeling over King's body immediately after the shooting, ostensibly checking for vital signs, but his instant appearance on the balcony within seconds of the gunshot raises questions about his foreknowledge of the attack. According to Jowers, McCullough attended the conspiracy planning meeting at Jim's Grill the night before the assassination. The manipulation of King's hotel arrangements demonstrates the conspiracy's reach. King initially planned to stay in a more secure room facing away from the street, but someone called the Lorraine Motel claiming to be part of King's group and requested the room be changed back to 306, the exposed room with the large balcony. When King arrived, all other rooms were mysteriously booked, forcing him to accept the vulnerable accommodation. The day of the assassination, a bomb threat was called in to downtown Memphis, diverting police attention away from the Lorraine Motel area. Additionally, the black detective assigned to protect King, Ed Reddit, was pulled from duty based on a fabricated threat against his life. These coordinated actions cleared the field for the assassins while providing them with alibis and confusion. James Earl Ray's own account reveals him as an unwitting pawn in a larger operation. According to Ray, he was recruited by a mysterious figure known only as Raoul, while hiding in Canada after his prison escape. Raoul provided Ray with money, fake identification documents, and a cover story about smuggling weapons to Cuban exiles. Ray claimed Raoul instructed him to purchase the Remington 760 rifle as a sample for a larger arms deal with Cuban militants. When Ray mistakenly bought the wrong caliber, Raoul made him exchange it for the specific model later found at the crime scene. This explains why Ray's fingerprints were on the weapon without him being the actual shooter. On April 4th, according to Ray's testimony, Raoul told him to rent a room at the boarding house as a meeting place for the arms transaction and to wait outside as a getaway driver in case anything went wrong. Ray claimed he was sitting in his white Mustang when he heard the gunshot, saw Raoul run from the bushes and jump into the car, and drove away believing they were fleeing from a deal gone bad. Only when Ray heard radio reports hours later did he realise he had been used as an unwitting accomplice in King's assassination. By then, Raoul had disappeared, leaving Ray as the perfect patsy, an escaped convict with no political connections whose fingerprints were on the murder weapon and who had been seen in the area. Ray's background makes him an ideal fall guy for a sophisticated intelligence operation. After serving in the army at the end of World War II, Ray was reportedly involved with the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, the predecessor to the CIA. His brother claimed Ray would never discuss his OSS activities and only made cryptic references to being controlled by people like the mafia. Once you join, you're never really allowed to leave. Ray's multiple escape attempts from Missouri State Penitentiary were suspiciously unsuccessful until the final breakout, when he simply hid in an empty shipping box and was loaded onto a truck without inspection. His cellmate, who encouraged the escape attempt, was later found dead in his cell with broken arms and legs, officially ruled a suicide despite the obvious signs of violence. The sophistication of Ray's post-escape activities contradicts his reputation as a bumbling criminal. Somehow, this small-time robber with limited education acquired multiple high-quality fake identities, passports, and sufficient funds to travel internationally. His movements between the United States and Canada required coordination and resources far beyond the capabilities of a lone fugitive. Ray's complete ignorance about firearms further undermines the lone gunman theory. When purchasing the rifle, gun store employees reported that Ray knew nothing about calibers, scopes, or rifle capabilities. For someone allegedly motivated to assassinate a prominent civil rights leader, Ray showed remarkable ignorance about the tools needed for such a task. The legal proceedings following King's assassination reveal systematic efforts to prevent the truth from emerging. Ray's original attorney, Percy Foreman, pressured him to accept a guilty plea by threatening him with the electric chair if he went to trial. Foreman, who had known connections to organised crime figures, told Ray that pleading guilty was his only chance to avoid execution. 3 days after entering his guilty plea, Ray fired Foreman and attempted to withdraw his confession. He claimed Foreman had coerced him into the plea by threatening that refusing would result in his brother being arrested as a co-conspirator and that Ray himself might be killed before trial. Ray spent the remaining 30 years of his life trying unsuccessfully to obtain a new trial. Multiple judges who initially agreed to consider Ray's request for a new trial died under suspicious circumstances. Judge Arthur Facan, who stated that the evidence warranted a retrial, died of a sudden heart attack. His replacement, Judge William Dwyer, also agreed that Ray deserved a new trial, and then died of another sudden heart attack. The third judge assigned to the case refused to consider a retrial. The King family's investigation into the assassination led them to conclude that Ray was innocent of the actual shooting. In 1997, Dexter King, Martin Luther King's son, visited Ray in prison and asked directly, "Did you kill my father?" Ray replied, No, I didn't," to which Dexter responded, "I believe you and my family believes you." The 1999 civil trial brought by the King family against Lloyd Jowers and unnamed government conspirators resulted in a unanimous jury verdict finding that King was assassinated as the result of a conspiracy involving local, state and federal government agencies. The trial lasted 4 weeks and included testimony from over 70 witnesses, but received minimal media coverage despite its historic significance. Attorney William Pepper, who represented both James Earl Ray and the King family, presented over 4,000 pages of evidence documenting the conspiracy. The evidence implicated the FBI, CIA, US Army Military Intelligence, Memphis Police Department, and organised crime figures in a coordinated plot to eliminate King. The 902nd Military Intelligence Group was conducting surveillance of King at the time of his assassination, with cameras and agents positioned throughout the area. When called to provide photographic evidence to congressional investigators, military officials claimed all photographs from April 4, 1968 had been destroyed, a convenient loss of potentially crucial evidence. The medical evidence surrounding King's death raises additional questions about official misconduct. Despite being a potential federal crime, no autopsy was performed on King's body after the FBI took control of the investigation. This prevented independent verification of bullet trajectories and wound patterns that could have confirmed or refuted the official story. Witnesses at St. Joseph's Hospital reported that King still had vital signs when he arrived, and that medical staff were attempting resuscitation. According to a nurse who was present, a group of men in suits entered the emergency room and ordered medical personnel to step away from King's body. The nurse claimed she saw these men disconnect King's life support equipment before the official time of death was pronounced. The pattern of suspicious deaths among witnesses and investigators mirrors other high-profile assassinations. Lewis Ward, a cab driver who claimed to have seen the real assassin escape from the bushes, died when he allegedly jumped from a moving vehicle on a highway, officially ruled a suicide despite witnesses who said he was not suicidal. Bill Sarter, a journalist investigating the assassination, died in 1971 after his drink was poisoned while he was asking questions in Waco, Texas. FBI Assistant Director William Sullivan, who was scheduled to testify about Hoover's activities before the House Select Committee on Assassinations, was shot to death in a hunting accident, officially described as a case of mistaken identity. Alfred King, Martin Luther King's brother who was conducting his own investigation into the assassination, was found dead in his swimming pool despite being an excellent swimmer. The official cause of death was drowning, but Alfred had no water in his lungs and showed signs of strangulation around his neck. The House Select Committee on Assassinations, established in the 1970s to investigate both the Kennedy and King murders, was systematically undermined by intelligence agency Infiltration. The committee's liaison for information about the King case was later revealed to be a CIA agent, meaning the agency being investigated was controlling the evidence provided to investigators. Take a look at what happened in the final moments of King's life. As he prepared to leave for dinner, King stepped onto the balcony of room 306 and leaned over the railing to speak with musician Ben Branch in the parking lot below. His final words were a request. "Ben, make sure you play 'Take My Hand, Precious Lord' in the meeting tonight. Play it real pretty." The single rifle shot struck King in the lower right jaw at 6:01 p.m., shattering bone and severing major arteries in his neck. The bullet's trajectory, entering from below and travelling upward, is inconsistent with a shot fired from the bathroom window above and behind King's position. The wound pattern suggests the shot came from ground level, consistent with a shooter positioned in the bushes behind the boarding house. King's associates immediately rushed to his aid, with several men kneeling around his fallen body on the balcony. Andrew Young checked for vital signs while others called for medical assistance. The scene was captured in iconic photographs that show the grieving faces of the civil rights movement's leadership as they realised their leader had been struck down. King was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital, where trauma surgeons worked desperately to save his life. Despite their efforts, the massive damage to his neck and the loss of blood proved too severe. King was officially pronounced dead at 7:05 p.m, though questions remain about exactly when he died and whether his death could have been prevented with different medical intervention. The immediate aftermath of the assassination saw Memphis erupt in violence as news of King's death spread through the black community. Riots broke out in over 120 cities across America, resulting in 43 deaths and thousands of arrests. The National Guard was deployed in multiple cities as the nation grappled with the loss of its most prominent advocate for non-violent social change. President Lyndon Johnson declared a national day of mourning and ordered flags flown at half-staff. Congress quickly passed the Fair Housing Act, which had been stalled in committee as a tribute to King's memory. But for many Americans, especially in the black community, King's assassination marked the end of hope for peaceful racial reconciliation. The FBI immediately took control of the investigation, despite having no clear federal jurisdiction over what appeared to be a state crime. This unusual federal intervention prevented local investigators from pursuing leads that might have exposed the broader conspiracy. Key evidence was classified, witnesses were intimidated, and alternative theories were systematically suppressed. The speed with which James Earl Ray was identified as the suspect suggests prior knowledge of his involvement in the plot. Within hours of the shooting, before any forensic analysis could be completed, authorities had connected the rifle to Ray through its serial number and were broadcasting his description as the primary suspect. Ray's capture 2 months later at London's Heathrow Airport appeared to vindicate the FBI's investigation, but it raised more questions than it answered. How did an escaped convict with limited resources manage to evade the largest manhunt in FBI history while travelling internationally? His sophisticated escape route suggested assistance from intelligence professionals rather than the actions of a lone fugitive. The international implications of King's assassination cannot be overlooked. King had become increasingly critical of American foreign policy, particularly the Vietnam War, calling the United States the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. His planned Poor People's Campaign threatened to unite economic issues with anti-war sentiment, creating a powerful coalition against establishment policies. King's assassination effectively ended the unified civil rights movement and ushered in an era of more militant black activism. Organizations like the Black Panthers gained prominence as faith in nonviolent change diminished. The murder removed the most effective voice for peaceful racial progress and social justice, fundamentally altering the trajectory of American history. The cover-up surrounding King's assassination demonstrates the lengths to which powerful interests will go to protect themselves. Evidence was destroyed, witnesses were silenced, and investigations were corrupted to prevent the truth from emerging. The fact that the King family had to file a civil lawsuit to achieve even limited justice shows how completely the official system failed. Modern analysis of the assassination continues to support the conspiracy theory rejected by the government for over 50 years. Advanced ballistics testing, computer modelling of bullet trajectories, and acoustical analysis of recordings from the scene all contradict the official lone gunman narrative. Yet federal authorities refuse to reopen the investigation or acknowledge the evidence of conspiracy. The mapping of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination reveals a sophisticated operation designed to eliminate America's most effective advocate for social justice and racial equality. The conspiracy involved federal law enforcement agencies, local police, organised crime figures, and military intelligence units working together to murder a man whose only weapons were words and moral authority. The evidence overwhelmingly supports the conclusion reached by King's own family and a civil jury, that James Earl Ray was a patsy in a larger conspiracy, orchestrated by powerful interests threatened by King's message of justice and equality. The real assassins escaped justice while an expendable fall guy spent 30 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. Today, the Lorraine Motel has been preserved as the National Civil Rights Museum, with room 306 maintained exactly as it was on April 4, 1968. Visitors can stand on the balcony where King died and look across Mulberry Street to the boarding house where the official story claims the shot originated. The physical impossibility of that shot becomes apparent to anyone who examines the scene. The questions raised by King's assassination about government accountability, the limits of dissent, and the price of challenging powerful interests remain as relevant today as they were in 1968. The systematic suppression of evidence and the failure to achieve justice demonstrate how easily truth can be buried when it threatens those in power. Whether James Earl Ray fired the shot that killed Martin Luther King Jr. may never be definitively proven, but the evidence clearly shows he did not act alone. The conspiracy that ended King's life succeeded in silencing one of history's greatest voices for human dignity and social progress. The price of that silence continues to be paid by generations of Americans denied the leadership that King might have provided. The legacy of April 4, 1968, serves as a stark reminder that in the struggle for justice and equality, those who speak truth to power do so at great personal risk. Martin Luther King Jr. paid the ultimate price for his commitment to human rights, but his vision of a just society remains alive in the continued fight for equality and human dignity around the world.